DFS, DGen Nation, what is up? What is happening? We are on to the wild card weekend, the super wild card weekend. We got 6 games this weekend. I mean, I think it could definitely be a lot worse. I think most of these matchups, I think the lowest total is like a 44. So that is a positive. And a lot of these teams are getting healthy as well. So we should be getting some players back as well for this slate. At first I was admittedly a little upset when I saw that the 2 featured slates was the 2-gamer on Saturday and the 3-game on Sunday, but they saved the day with the 6-gamer, being a relevant slate with some good matchups there, or some good contests. So that is a positive. Anyways, Matty, how you doing?
I'm doing good, and I couldn't agree more. I'm very, very happy and excited that they saved the day by having some decent 6-gamer contests. That's probably where I'm going to have most of my action. And definitely going to play the 2-gamer and the 3-gamer. But, you get 6 games. It gives you a little more leeway with, you don't have to have things as perfect when you got more games to deal with. So definitely going to fire at the 6-gamer as my main action this weekend. And but going to play the 2 and 3-gamer as well.
Yeah, I'll be right there with you. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to play Showdown. I'll definitely be playing the Chiefs Showdown, the Monday Night Showdown. Maybe even play the Saturday Night Showdown. I'll
play the night. Probably play the night game showdowns, like the last games of the day for all 3 days.
Yeah. So, anyways, we wanted to, normally, typically here we go position by position for the main slate, but with this being a 6-game slate and kind of the main slates being the 2-gamer and the 3-gamer, we decided we're just going to go game by game here and talk about some of the, these different games and kind of some areas maybe we might be able to exploit and, get some action on. So especially with so many different slates, people playing different slates, I figured that we thought this would be a little bit more the best way to go. Next week, I believe, is as long as DraftKings does the right thing and makes the main slate the Saturday and Sunday slate, which is what they typically do in the past, then we'll go back to position by position. But for this week, we're going to go game by game. So let's kick things off with the first game of the slate, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders at Cincinnati Bengals. That is a 49-point total as of right now. You have the Bengals at a 27.25 implied point total, with the Raiders at a 21.75 point total here. It has been bet up, open at a 48. It's up to 49 at where I'm looking at right now. So let's start with this game. I guess, where do you want to start at with this game, and kind of, what intrigues you, I guess, with this game?
So, I mean, kind of everything from this game semi-intrigues me. I wonder, do you think this ends up being one of the more popular games on the slate, with just from, maybe not so much on the Raider side, but the hype around Jamar Chase over the last 2 to 3 weeks, and as well as Joe Burrow. I mean, we've seen Joe Burrow throw for an insane amount of yards and touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, really. And so I just feel like a lot of people are going to flock to Burrow here. And, I can't fault them for that, but I mean, when these 2 teams played a couple of weeks ago, Burrow threw 29 times and Joe Mixon ran the ball 30 times. So they actually ran it more than they threw it, which is very interesting. Burrow only had, I think, 10 DraftKings points in that game, and Joe Mixon put up 27. And so I expect Mixon to be popular too. I mean, when, he's been one of the top PPR running backs on the year, really. He's been semi-involved in the pass game. And whenever he can get involved in the pass game, he's been one of the top scorers in the league. I mean, you look over the last 2 weeks, he's got 14 targets in the last 2 weeks. That's pretty significant. Is that something you think we see? They just continue to throw to Mixon over and over again? I mean, he's been one of their bright spots in the offense. And, when they can't get him going on the ground, they've involved him in the pass game. And the Raiders are definitely somebody you can involve the running back in pretty heavily. I mean, we just saw Eckler. Eckler did pretty well against them in the had-to-have-it game this past week. We've seen running backs throughout the year do well against them. And like I said, Joe Mixon a couple of weeks ago, he put up 27 with 0 pass catching work. He had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I think Mixon is probably where I'm going to end up from this game. I just feel like Burrow is going to be a little too popular for me, especially Jamar Chase as well. And obviously you can play, Jamar Chase by himself, but if Jamar Chase is going to go for, the 200 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, then he's going to take Burrow with him probably. So I almost would rather just play those guys together as opposed to playing Chase as a one-off.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like this as a stack. I think you could go to, especially at some of their prices. But it has been interesting with Joe Mixon and the way that they've really utilized him because, like you've said, like over the past 2 games, he's averaging 26 routes run and 17% target share, which is kind of crazy because earlier in the year they really weren't utilizing him like that, and that was kind of one of the frustrating things with him is he wasn't seeing as much pass catching work. Well, the most he has seen in terms of targets, prior to week 16 was 6. And that was all the way back week 6 against Detroit. Other than that, it was 0, 5, 5, 0, 4, 1, 2, 1. And then all of a sudden, the last 2 weeks, it's 6 targets and then 8 targets, which really raises his floor because he was a little bit more volatile because you couldn't count on him to do anything in the passing game, which is weird because he's a tremendous pass catcher. I never really understood why they haven't utilized him more as a pass catcher because on the season he only has 48 targets, which is 28th among all running backs. But I mean, if this trend continues, then I think you're going to have to pretty much. I feel like he's going to definitely be one of the top guys on the slate because the Raiders have really struggled against the run this year. They've been better against the pass than they have against the run, but. I think that, a couple areas here that is going to be intriguing is that on the Raiders side, the Raiders haven't been great at really getting the quarterback. They have the 12th fewest sacks on the season, but we know that the Bengals, especially their offensive line has been atrocious, and Joe Burrow leads the league in sacks, and it's not even close. Because this offensive line has just been a problem, and so I think their game plan is probably going to continue to be, try to get the ball out of his hands quickly, because this Raiders pass defense looked better against Justin Herbert. I mean, but other than that, but for the most part this year, this pass rush has not been great. But I would say that the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line is far worse, and so that could be a problem here in this game. We have seen these 2 teams play. It was an absolute blowout. It was 32-13 Cincinnati in Las Vegas. And you already mentioned kind of what they did in that game. Joe Burrow, really over the last 6 games has been really. He has 4 300-yard passing games over his last 6, which is tied with only Brady, and then the next closest I think is 2, which I think is Josh Allen. So over the last 6 games, so he has been pretty consistent, hitting that floor or that 300-yard bonus, which obviously comes in handy. He is obviously not a running quarterback. But on this slate, how many are there? You have Kyler Murray, who has started to run the ball more, obviously Jalen Hurts, and then, Pat Mahomes will mix in a little bit, and Josh Allen obviously will. But depending on which slate you're playing, it's going to dictate, some of this as well. But I do really like this stack. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't have a whole lot of interest in Tyler Boyd, in this passing attack because he just has not been really all that involved. Over the past 4 weeks, he only has 20 targets over the past 4 weeks. It's not terrible, but I just don't think he's going to kill me either in this game. I feel like that it really comes down to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase between these 2. And I think if I have to take a stand, I'm probably going to go T. Higgins. Because I think Jamar Chase is going to be more popular. The Raiders have done actually a really good job of limiting big plays. They have allowed the 6th fewest pass plays of 20+ yards this year, and so that has been something. And I think that not that Jamar Chase is just a deep threat, but I think T. Higgins is a little bit more where he wins on the short intermediate routes than something that Jamar Chase does, and so. I prefer T. Higgins here, and I really won't have a whole lot of interest in Tyler Boyd. I think if I'm going to stack Burrow, it's going to be with Higgins, and I still think you can run Mixon in that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could absolutely run all pick one of the two big receivers, whether it's Higgins or Chase, because I mean, they seem to be like DK and Lockett, right, where they kind of alternate. When Higgins has his monster games, it seems to not be Jamar Chase going with him. So, um, except for the Baltimore game. I mean, Burrow threw for 500 yards that game and 5 touchdowns. So you can kind of throw that one out a little bit because that's an anomaly that's probably not going to repeat itself. But yeah, I agree. And I think, people may look at this slate and say, oh, well, if I'm playing Joe Burrow, I don't want to play Mixon. Or if I'm playing Mixon, I don't want to play Burrow. And you absolutely can play both of them together. I mean, Mixon's got 14 targets in the last 2 weeks. And he has, let's see here. He's got only three receiving touchdowns. He's got 3 receiving touchdowns this year. So definitely a chance for him to score through the air as well. He's not going to be somebody like Eckler who's going to, have a heavy usage through the air, but definitely somebody who can be utilized in the pass game. And it has a high touchdown equity. He's got 16 touchdowns this year. That's a lot. So yeah, I think definitely wouldn't fade Cincinnati completely. And if you're going to stack up Cincinnati, don't be afraid to play Mixon with Burrow.
As far as this whole slate is concerned, is Joe Mixon your favorite running back on the slate?
He has to be. I mean, you can run the ball in New England, but I mean, Singletary, he's fine. I mean, Singletary has been crushing over the last, few weeks. He's got a really good workload. He's probably somebody I'm going to end up on regardless, just because there's not a ton of running backs here to love this week, to be honest. I mean, are you going to play Cam Akers at 4,200? It's tempting.
I mean, how much do you think he really gets involved? I mean,
he had 5 carries and 3 targets last week, 8 opportunities in his first action, pretty much.
And I don't hate it because we know the Cardinals, get gashed a lot on the ground.
And they said he was going to get a significant workload bump in the playoffs because that's the whole reason he came back, was to try to help his team win a Super Bowl. And we know, Michelle is not going to be involved in the pass game. And they pretty much showed us last week. I mean, 3 targets and 5 carries, that if Cam Akers is going to get usage, he's going to get usage in the pass game.
Yeah, Sonny Michel did absolutely really nothing.
Yeah, he had 20-something carries for 40-something yards.
Yeah, it was
it's bad.
Yeah. 21 carries for 28 yards. Almost had more carries than yards. That's never a good sign.
I mean, I guess if Fournette plays, you have to assume he's going to be a full go, right, if he's playing, because he's dealing with a hamstring injury. Because I mean, otherwise, if he's not a full go, they can just try to lean on Brady with makeshift running backs back there. Like Vaughn, they can get past Philly with those guys back there in the backfield. But if Fournette plays, I mean, he has to be at the top of your list. His pass game usage is just so much higher than everybody else's. I mean, he leads the NFL in targets for the running back position. He pretty much gets 7 to 8 targets a game. Like, you can pretty much lock in that. So, yeah, I think Fournette would probably be my number 1 if he plays, and then Mixon would be my 2, and Singletary would be my 3.
All right, well, let's keep it moving in this game, and let's jump over to the Raiders side of the football. Derek Carr, I really don't have any interest in him. He hasn't scored more than 15 DK points since week 12. I think he could, it's possible, especially if they fall behind early, they really have to throw the ball a lot. But overall, there's just so many other spots. I just can't play Derek Carr on this slate. Josh Jacobs is kind of interesting, but I think some of the shine wears off a little bit with him because while over the last 6 weeks, he is 3rd in total targets over that span, we've seen a dramatic drop-off in his pass-catching usage, though, since Jalen Richard has come back, and it's all coincided with Richard coming back because if you look at Josh Jacobs, over the last 4 weeks that Jalen Richard's come back, he started to get more and more involved in the passing game, where even the last 2 weeks, he's ran 12 and 16 routes for Jalen Richard, despite the fact he's only played 20 and 28% of the snaps. And so we've seen a drop off for Josh Jacobs in terms of targets, which is kind of what was making him attractive as an option, right? But if you go back, if you look at him, I mean, he was going from 25 routes per game. He's down to 15 per game over the last 3. And so I will say he is 9th in yards created, 7th in yards created per touch on the season, but I don't think he's as attractive now if he's not going to get the pass catching work that he was seeing, especially at 6,500 and the third highest priced running back on the slate. Even though, I mean, he is coming off obviously a big game against the Chargers where he went off for 132 yards and a score.
That's the best. That's the best running back matchup in the league, pretty much. Yes. Them in Philly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's just what worries me with him. Like, if he's not going to get the pass catching volume and they fall behind, I mean, they're not going to be able to run the ball like they want. And so I just think he's a very volatile play. It'd be different if he was continuing to see the same sort of pass catching work that he was seeing earlier in the year. So I just don't have as much excitement of playing him. And then with the pass catchers, what we've seen over the past 4 weeks is what we've seen kind of a shift here, and where what's happening is teams are taking away Hunter Renfrow and they are just bracketing him and forcing Derek Carr to use his other pass catchers. And I thought maybe with Darren Waller coming back last week that maybe that would change a little bit and teams would have to now be forced to really account for him. But he really wasn't. I mean, he was coming off a pretty long absence. They hadn't played since week 12. He did play 78% of the snaps last week, saw 9 targets, but only 2 receptions for 22 yards. But that's pretty much what they did in the second half. They just are really, I mean, after the touchdown that he scored against the Chargers, they bracketed him in that game. But what we've seen is Zay Jones really emerge as the wide receiver 1 there in Las Vegas. He's seeing over the last 4 weeks a 30% target share for Zay Jones, and he's only 4,200. And so I think you have to have some interest if you're wanting to pay down, looking for a pay down option on this slate. Like, I think Zay Jones is it.
Yeah, I'm on board.
If you look at the targets that he's been seeing, I mean, really go back to really it started, really kind of week 12, 7, 5, 7, 9, 8, 10, and 8 targets.
That's after Ruggs left.
Yeah,
pretty much. He's pretty much taken over the Ruggs role.
He's been the main beneficiary of.
And did you watch the game last week, right?
Yeah.
Didn't Carr miss him by like half a foot on a deep shot down the field in the first quarter?
Yeah.
Like he was wide open for a touchdown, and Carr barely missed him. I think it was on the first or second drive. But yeah, I mean, 4,200 for a guy who can see 8 to 10 targets and has he's averaged an ADOT of 14 this year. I mean, that's pretty significant. And like you said, over the last 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, I guess, has been the main target guy for Derek Carr. And now, obviously, Darren Waller has missed most of that time. And I think if the Raiders are going to do anything this game, they have to go through Darren Waller. I mean, Cincinnati's been so bad against the tight ends this year, and we saw Darren Waller crush in the same matchup a couple weeks ago as well. I mean, Darren Waller scored one of his few 20-point games that we've seen from him. And there was some questions around him coming back in week 18. How much of a workload would he be able to see with his knee injury that he suffered against Dallas on Thanksgiving? And he saw 9 targets last week. It seems like whenever Derek Carr wants to throw the ball to Darren Waller, it's like Derek Carr forgets how to pass. He sails it out of bounds, and it's like Darren Waller is open and he looks good out there. It's just, and he's getting the volume. It's just Derek Carr just has to hit him. And at some point those are going to connect just because, Darren Waller is too good of too much of a freak athlete to not, actually catch passes in the NFL. So at some point this volume is going to pay off, and what better spot to do it against, one of the worst defensive teams at defending the tight end position. You're muted, Kev.
Oh, my bad. I was very, very frustrated last week because in the showdown slate for the Raiders, I had a lot of Darren Waller.
I played him too, and he was only like 15 or 20% owned. And it's like, you watch the game and he's getting all these targets, but it's just like Carr forgets how to throw it to him, or he's hitting a streaking Waller across the middle of the field, and Waller turns his head before the ball gets to his hands and drops it. It's like at some point, dude, this volume is going to connect, and Waller's he's going to absolutely smash. I mean, and then, like I said, Cincinnati can't defend tight ends. They haven't all year. And we saw Waller crushing this matchup just a couple weeks ago as well. So,
yeah, I mean, Waller in the same matchup, he went 7 receptions, 116 yards, no score, 21.6 DK points.
Yeah. So you throw a touchdown in, and you're looking at 28.
Yeah.
And he's 5,700 on the 6-gamer.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So I'm going to have a ton of Darren Waller.
I agree.
He is by far my favorite option on the Raiders. Next up would be Zay Jones, that I would go to, and then I don't know. Like I don't hate playing Josh Jacobs, but I don't know what the ceiling is if they're just not going to utilize him in the passing game.
Yeah, I'm probably out on Jacobs. I think there's better running backs.
I agree.
He's got an attractive floor because you look at his game log and it's just littered with 10 to 15 point games, but his ceiling just hasn't been there. Minus last week. He threw out last week.
Yeah. I mean, well, some of it has been because of the pass catching work. He is actually 9th among all running backs at targets this year, which is not something I had on my bingo card this year, that Josh Jacobs was going to be the year that they were finally going to use him as a pass catcher, because every year we've heard that from them, from Mike Mayock and John Gruden, talking about how, we're going to utilize him a lot more in the passing game, and they never would. Now they finally have. And so I think with Josh Jacobs, like I don't mind him, but I just don't think he's any way that I'm going to use as a priority. So probably have, depending on how many lineups I play, I'll probably have a little bit of exposure because it's a 6-game slate and anything can happen. But I'm not going to make him a priority by any means, being the third highest priced running back on the slate.
Cody asked, would you play him on FanDuel? I know we're talking DK here, but in where it's half PPR and touchdowns are more heavily weighted, or you think there's still other guys more likely to score touchdowns this week?
I don't even know what he costs on FanDuel.
I don't either.
That would be my question. I
mean, just from a touchdown standpoint, though, I mean, I think Mixon's more likely to score. Najee Harris is probably more likely to score. Even some of the New England guys like Damian Harris, he's got 15 touchdowns this year, and you can run on Buffalo. The Arizona guys, James Conner, he can score 2 touchdowns in any game. Fournette, if he plays, he's got 10 touchdowns this year. Singletary has come on as of late. Singletary's got five touchdowns in the last 4 games for Singletary. And he's got 8 on the year. They've just really made a conscious effort since week 15 to get Singletary involved. 22, 12, 23, and 19 carries. Hasn't been as involved in the pass game, but hasn't really been matchups where he's needed it either.
Yeah, and if you look too, again, over the last 4 weeks, of all running backs on the slate, actually it's kind of funny that Devin Singletary is actually first in red zone carries, and he's actually first in carries, and it's of carries inside the 5, which is tied with Daryl Williams and Josh Jacobs. So obviously he is the preferred goal line back. Yeah. And so again, I don't mind him. I think that there's some upside, a little bit of upside there with him. And if they do decide to use him again as a pass catcher, but it just seems like Jalen Richard seems to be kind of the preferred third down back now, and that where Josh Jacobs was getting that role, and now they've kind of taken it away from him. Now on a half point PPR side, that's not as important, but I still feel like there's enough running backs on here, depending on what they're priced over on FanDuel. I mean, even like somebody like Zeke, I think has some sort of, on a half point makes him a little bit more attractive. Devin Singletary I just talked about. I mean, they have really just leaned on him. He has been kind of the main guy there in that backfield. And so I like him. I just think there's a lot better options. It doesn't sound like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to make it back. He has not yet practiced this week at all. And to be honest, I don't think the Chiefs look at this game that they're going to need to rush Clyde Edwards-Helaire back. And so 13. Yeah, and I mean Daryl Williams and Derek Gore have kind of proven that they can handle the load. So, that's kind of where I stand on it anyway. So I just don't think he's a priority. I don't mind him. Do you have any interest in good old CJ Uzoma? 3,200. He does see targets. I mean, if you look, I mean, if you go back,
I'm just gonna say no, just because I'm gonna play Darren Waller.
I think I probably agree. But I mean, it is because 6, 7, 4, 6 targets for him over the last 6 weeks, over the last 5 weeks, excuse me.
Yeah, and tight ends crush the Raiders too.
Yeah, they're actually right there. They're right next to each other in terms of DK points allowed. The Bengals allow the 6th most, and the Raiders allow the 7th most. They're literally 15.4 and 15.3 DK points allowed.
Yeah, and I mean, didn't dusty ass Jared Cook almost go for 100 yards last week?
Yeah, Mr. I can't catch. Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
he's interesting for sure. Absolutely.
I think it's a little bit thin. I think if you're wanting to run a game stack and get a little bit different with the Bengals and maybe do Burrow, Higgins, and or Chase for that matter, and Uzoma, I think you could do that. And just kind of get a little bit different. But there's so many good tight ends, and I don't think somebody like Patty Fry, Dallas Goedert is not expensive. Zach Ertz isn't all that expensive, and like you already mentioned, Darren Waller's only $5,700. That is extremely cheap for what the upside. I mean, he has legit 30-point upside in the bag. Hell, I mean, even Travis Kelce's only $6,700. And I mean, he's typically a guy we're looking at that's $7,500.
Yeah,
I just don't know if there's really a reason to get super cute with somebody like CJ Uzoma, but I did want to mention him because he is in this game. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to talk about with this game. Do you?
No, I think the Devin Singletary talk is a good segue into the next game for the New England at Buffalo game, which is the Saturday night game at 8:15. I think, it's the lowest total game of the week. We've got, the reports already coming out that it's going to be pretty much 0 degrees. And Bart Scott is telling Josh Allen to take Viagra pills to get his blood flowing.
Just legendary line.
Just old legendary Bart Scott.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So that game's fun. It's already being hyped up for how cold it's going to be. So, I think that and just because of the matchups too, these past games are going to go completely overlooked. Is there enough, is there anything here that stands out to you from a ceiling standpoint? Because I mean, 1 or 2 of these offenses on the 6-game slate are going to break the slate, right? From a pass game standpoint, you've got, Cincinnati against Vegas, Dallas against San Fran, Kansas City against Pittsburgh, and you got the Rams and Arizona facing each other, and even Tampa Bay against Philly. So I just feel like that this game being the lowest total game of the slate, it just feels wrong and feels negative EV to want to attack this game from a stack standpoint through the air. And I mean, I guess you can play Diggs as a one-off, but in that regard, I mean, he's going to see JC Jackson all game, right? And he's going to, that's just not saying Diggs can't go for, 80 yards and a touchdown and still have a solid game and get you, 19 points. But I mean, is that good enough? Because I mean, if Pittsburgh can keep it close and keep Tyreek on the field, we know Tyreek's got a monster ceiling. We know Jamar Chase has a monster ceiling. Cooper Kupp's up there. He's got a monster ceiling. So there are some big name guys at wide receiver that can put up big games on this slate. So I'm not sure I'm going to get to Diggs, but I mean, 7,200 for Stephon Diggs on the 6-gamer. That's just, man, that's the lowest he's been all year. He had a $7,100 game back in week 5 against Kansas City, but I mean, he's pretty much a lock for double-digit points. And as solid of a floor as you get. And I don't know whether I'm going to end up with Diggs or not, but he's definitely interesting. But all that to say, I think Singletary is the main piece of this game for me. You look at, like we mentioned, when they play games where the game is in hand, he's not been getting a lot of targets. So they beat the Jets by 17. He got 2 targets, but he had 19 carries. They beat Atlanta by 14. Only had 1 target, but got 23 carries. Then the New England game was kind of back and forth. They won by 12. He had 6 targets in that game and only had 12 carries, but they still got him his touches through the air. And I mean, that's kind of what you want, right? When you're playing on a full PPR side, is you'd rather see the targets more than the carries. So ever since they started getting him involved, more heavily since week 15, they've really only played 1 close game. That was against New England, and that's the game he had 6 targets. So And even if you look at the Week 14 game before they started giving him 20 carries, he had 7 targets against Tampa Bay in a game they lost by 6. So I think Singletary is very, very interesting and has one of the best floors on the slate, especially at the running back position.
I 100% agree. Absolutely love Devin Singletary, especially at the price. The price is kind of ridiculous with the production that he's been putting up over really a long-standing time. I mean, we're not talking about a one-off that he had a good game. I mean, it's been really the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season that Devin Singletary has really taken over the backfield for the Bills, and so they finally have really committed to a running back. I mean, definitely Stephon Diggs is in play. He's actually torched them. I mean, he just did a couple of weeks ago when he had 13 targets, 7 for 85, and a score in that game for 21 and a half DK points in that game. He's starting to kind of get an uptick more and being more and more involved because, I mean, double-digit targets and 3 of his last 5. And so, I mean, Diggs is definitely in play. Gabriel Davis, Mr. 14 targets last week. 3 receptions for 39 yards. That's almost like a Devontae Adams type game from years ago. Like, how do you get 14 targets but only get 3 receptions for 39 yards?
Yeah.
But what we know is that the hard part here is that you're also going to have Emmanuel Sanders back, who's practicing full today. You also have Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox and Gabe Davis and Steph Diggs. There's so many pass catchers here to go around. Like, I don't think any of them truly stand out. And this is the lowest total on the slate with you have Buffalo, who is a 24-point implied total, where you have New England at a 20, and it's a 44 total on the slate. It has risen a half a point. So this also isn't really the sexiest game to target either. Divisional game, the rubber match. I mean, this game could very well be a 17-10 type game, And so I don't love it. I think if I am going to target this game, it's going to be through Devin Singletary and probably, try to work in a little bit of one-offs like a Stephon Diggs or something like that. As far as the New England side, I really don't have much interest in the New England side either.
I agree. I think they spread the ball around too much and they involve too many guys.
I mean, Jacoby Myers is like kind of interesting, but I don't know. He doesn't really. I mean, he has 2 touchdowns. He finally found the end zone again in Week 17 against the Jags. He sees a lot of targets. Week 15 he had 12 targets, 8 targets in the last matchup against the Bills. 8. He sees a decent amount of targets. And he's only $4,500. So I don't mind targeting him at that price, but again, I don't think he has an elite ceiling either.
I agree. I think I'm going to be off the New England side completely myself.
Yeah, I agree. Walito coming in with the $10 holler. I'm late, boys. Sorry,
Yo, welcome back, Walito.
We'll let it slide. Got his first appearance on the DFS DGen pod. So last week, I thought he did a pretty good job. And we got TN. The OG, the TFA, he was literally our 3rd subscriber we ever had. So when I mean OG, I mean it was me and probably Anthony that were subscribed that we started, and then TN was our 3rd. I mean, he was literally been here since day one.
Let's go.
Please forgive me if this is not the right stream, but picks are due in a few hours. At the end of the stream, can you review your money line picks for the wild card games plus confidence level? Thanks a bunch. Yeah, I think we can do that.
Let's just do it right now while he's here.
All right. So where do you come in?
Well, Kansas City would be my number 1. I would rank them at about obviously, anything can happen in this league this year. We saw the Jets almost beat Tampa Bay, and we saw, all these other crazy games that have happened. The Lions beat Arizona, and Jacksonville just beat Indianapolis. So, never say never, but Kansas City plays infinitely better at home on the defensive side of the ball. And this Pittsburgh offense is just so bad. I know we've talked about it. I just can't stand watching this Steelers offense play. They're just so bad. So, so I would rank KC as my favorite money line pick, and I would rate them pretty high. I would put it at a 12, not going to put it at 13 because nothing is really a lock. Kev, do you agree? Is Kansas City your favorite pick of the week with no bias involved.
It is, but like there's this, I don't know. Like there's like I don't know. Maybe it's just because like it's the Chiefs, and like I don't, not because it's the Chiefs, but like I don't know. Like what it almost like feels like always when like everybody is on like a game, like everyone's like, this is a smash. Like this can't miss. This can't miss. It somehow misses, and I would probably not cry, but I would be very upset if the Chiefs lost as a 12.5-point favorite at home. To the Steelers. But
the thing with the Steelers is they move the ball down the field at 3-yard chunks. It's a 2-yard, 3-yard carry with Najee Harris. It's a 1.5-yard out route to Deontay Johnson, and then it's a missed deep shot to Chase Claypool down the sideline. And it's like, I don't know. I guess it could be a lower scoring, closer game because of the type of game that the Steelers do play. But at the same time, I just don't see that Pittsburgh defense really slowing down Kansas City's offense. I mean, you look at any metrics, and that Pittsburgh defense has not been great this year. And they're one of the worst defenses against the run, too. So, and I know, Kansas City doesn't necessarily love to just run the ball over and over, but they will have success on the ground. So, and we just saw this matchup a couple of weeks ago, and Kansas City wiped the floor with them and without any of their guys playing. So, yeah, it's hard for me to not have Kansas City as the favorite of the weekend.
So, okay. So that they're minus 722, by the way, for the money line. What would be your second that you just feel like is a lock?
I feel like I'm just kind of going with Vegas here, but I'd say Tampa Bay, assuming Fournette's back. And they're getting some key defenders back too, which is a big thing as well.
So, for me, I think it's the Bills. I think the Bills are an absolute lock. I think I can't see really. I know the Patriots have beat them once already, right? And I know that happened.
That was the fluke game, though. The weird one.
Yes, it was the weather was wild, 30-mile-an-hour winds. You couldn't throw the ball. That's really not going to be the case here so much for this game. This is at home in Buffalo. Yep. I just don't know how the Bills lose. So for me, the Bills would be second that I feel really confident with. So for me, it would be them.
I would rank them third. I just think Tampa Bay matches up. Tampa Bay will run the ball down your throat if you give them the ability to, and we know Philly will just let you run the ball over and over again. And then on
Philly
defense,
has been excellent against the run, like excellent, elite against the run the last like 6 or 7 weeks.
Well, they're still going to run the ball, and they're still going to throw it to Fournette. And even when they pass the ball, Philly allows you to have success to the tight end position and over the short middle part of the field, the slot wide receivers, which is exactly what we love with Brady. He's going to throw the ball a ton to Gronk, and then on the defensive side of the ball too. Philly wants to run the ball over and over again. They're one of the highest rushing, most output running teams in the NFL. And, we know what Tampa Bay is against the run on defense. So Philly's going to have to throw the ball to have success. And I just don't see that happening.
So that would be your third or second? No, that's your second.
I have them 2 and Buffalo 3. Yeah.
Okay. So I have actually the Rams at 3 for me. I think that, with Arizona missing DeAndre Hopkins, that sounds like they're going to get Chase Edmonds and James Conner. They'll have both of them. But I just think the Rams win this game pretty easily. The Cardinals' offense does not look nearly as good without DeAndre Hopkins. Definitely. And I just think that they're going to be too much. So the Rams would be third for me. And then this is where it gets into a territory where I think that a lot of these games could go different directions.
I think the Dallas-San Francisco game is definitely last. I think that's the most toss-up game of the weekend, Dallas-San Francisco.
Yeah. And I don't think the Raiders-Bengals, I could definitely see the Bengals, or the Raiders, winning that game. Like, I don't think it's out of the question for that to happen either. I think, Vegas, the Bengals right now are a 5-point favorite in terms of DraftKings as of right now on DraftKings, and they're 48.5-point favorite on DraftKings. But So my upsets of this weekend are Philly beating Tampa Bay and San Francisco beating Dallas. Like I think
I have gone down this road betting against Tom Brady in the playoffs. I did it last year in the Super Bowl. I put literally every dollar on Kansas City last year in the Super Bowl, and
I'm probably going to be wrong
for whatever reason. It doesn't work.
Well, and some of the narrative is that that is recency bias of how bad the Bucs have really kind of looked against some of these teams. Yes, they but the last couple of weeks they played really, really, really bad teams like the Panthers. But they struggled against the Jets and Philly. But I just don't know if right now. You're probably right. I probably have it Buccaneers fourth in terms of confidence level. Of winning this game. And then after that, it's definitely probably then Cincinnati and then Dallas would be last for me. But if I'm picking the 49ers. I'm taking the 49ers to beat the Cowboys this weekend. The 49ers feel like that team that's kind of getting hot at the right time when they're heading into the playoffs, right?
Yeah. And being a Cowboys fan and watching this same story play out way too many times where, they got a semi-decent team going into the playoffs and it's always, the Romo fumbles an extra point kick and gets tackled and tries to get it in for a 2-point conversion instead when he fumbled. Like, dude, shit always happens with the Dallas teams. It's crazy. It's like they got a monkey on their back. But I think the Dallas San Fran game is the biggest toss-up of the weekend, and I think you could pick either team, and I would have zero confidence in either one.
Okay, so I think that's kind of where we stand on it anyway. That's where at least I stand. For me, it's Rams, who I think wins. I'm taking the or it goes Chiefs, Rams, or excuse me, it was Chiefs, Bills, Rams, Bucks, Bengals, and then I'm going to San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I'm just gonna pick. I'm gonna pick Dallas
too, huh?
No, I'm gonna pick Dallas because I'm a Dallas fan. But I think the other. I'm with you on the other 5 games, which scares me. But yeah, I would rank them: Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Rams, Cincy, and then Dallas.
Because I will say this though: if Dallas and the Bucks make it through, I'm going all in on Dallas next week to beat the Bucks.
Oh yes, because they match up so much better with the Bucks than Philly does. And I know that you kind of mentioned that Philly's gotten better at defending the run over the last however many weeks, but they've only played Washington and the Giants the last 4 weeks. They've only played those 2 teams the last 4 weeks.
Well, so. You go even further back than that. They have done they have made a complete 180.
Yeah,
in terms of limiting the run.
Yeah, I don't know. It's still. I just think Brady's going to be able to do what he wants, even without Godwin, because he should get Fournette back here. Evans is fine. Gronk is going to see a healthy workload. Brady scored 30 DK points in the last 2 weeks. It tells you, he's still out there chucking it. So, yeah, when you're a Dallas fan, you don't have confidence in your squad. They never blow anybody out, and they tend to play in very close games, especially in the games that matter the most. But I will say this is the best defense they've had in a long time. This defense plays physical ball, and that's what San Francisco is going to try to do on the offense. So they match up really well with them. And Kev, like we said pre-show, kind of the reason I do like Dallas to win this game, even though I'm not super confident in it, is the teams that have had success on Dallas have thrown the ball deep. You watch, Kyler Murray a couple weeks ago for Arizona. He chucked the ball deep over and over and over and over again. You look at Derek Carr on Thanksgiving. He was hitting Deshaun Jackson deep. He was targeting Zay Jones deep. The Raiders were stretching the field. Dallas couldn't defend it. Dallas just struggles with these deep balls, and it's because their corners play aggressive. Trayvon Diggs is the main one. He tries to jump those short intermediate routes, and double moves burn him, and he's given up over 1,000 receiving yards because of it. So, yeah, these teams that can stretch the ball down the field usually have success against this Dallas defense. And I just don't see San Francisco being able to do that consistent enough. They want to run the football and they want to, get you in play action and hit Kittle over the middle of the field and get Debo, short targets out in space, and same with Ayuk. So, honestly, I think Ayuk would be the key to San Francisco winning is targeting Ayuk deep down the field.
Well, we'll see. So TN, we appreciate you. Appreciate it as always, my guy. Let's keep this moving because we are at 45 minutes and we are only 2 games through. Typical DFS DJ in fashion.
But we did just kind of talk about all 6 games in one breath, so
that is true. So the summary version. So anyways, actually, let's go ahead and move on to the Sunday, the first game there on that slate, which is the Eagles and Bucks game we just kind of briefly touched about. You actually have both of these implied point totals going down from what they opened at. The Eagles opened at a 20.5. It is down to 18 at 0.75. You have the Bucks who opened at a 29 implied point total down to 27.25. This game opened at a 49.5. It is all the way down to a 46 as of right now. So as we just kind of alluded to with some of these things, like I think with this slate, you have Jalen Hurts at $6,100. He is only cheaper. The only quarterbacks that are cheaper than him are Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Big Ben, and Mac Jones. He is down here below a good majority of these quarterbacks. I really don't mind playing naked Jalen Hurts at $6,100 with his rushing upside that he brings to the table, which is kind of unlike any other at least in terms of the volume of touches. I mean, we've seen games this year where he's at 18 carries, which is wild for any quarterback, right? But he has also been the most consistent just every week, week in and week out. We haven't seen that as much recently because they have been playing teams like the Washington football team and the New York Giants over the last 4 weeks. So they haven't really had to do a ton in those games. They've been able to kind of just lean on the run and not have Jalen Hurts do as much. But I don't mind Jalen Hurts, though, at $6,100. The running backs, it sounds like Miles Sanders is going to be back. Possibly. He was limited with that fractured hand. I really don't care. I don't really want to play running backs against the Bucs. So I will say the Bucs' run defense has not been as good recently than what we've seen all year. But I just don't think you have to go here. I think it's a little bit too cute. As far as the wide receivers are concerned, it's kind of Devontae Smith, and that's probably it, right? In terms of the wide receivers here in this game, who knows? Maybe Quez Watkins can, house call one or something like that. He is somebody that they tend to utilize as a deep threat. But he only has 2 games all year where he has scored more than double-digit DK points, and that was last week. Or week 18 against Dallas, where he had 5 receptions for 84 yards and a score. I believe that a lot of that came in garbage time, if I remember correctly. And the other one, other than that, was week 2 against San Francisco, where he had 16.7. That was 2 for 117 yards in that game. But on the Eagles side, like for me, it's Devontae Smith, it's Dallas Goedert if I want to go there. But I have much less interest in those guys than I do on some of the other players on the slate. And then I do like playing Jalen Hurts naked. Is there anybody else on the Philly side that you have any interest in?
No, I just want to reiterate for Jalen Hurts naked. He's got 10 rushing touchdowns this year. And what's interesting is 5 of those have come against New Orleans and Tampa Bay, the 2 best rushing defenses in the NFL. So don't be afraid to play Jalen Hurts here. He had 2 against Tampa and 3 against New Orleans. And part of that could be because the defense is so good at stopping the run on the inside that he's able to get outside the tackles. That's just, I haven't watched film to verify that, but, inherently thinking if a team is good at stopping the run from a running back perspective and the quarterback is having success running for touchdowns, that, there has to be some sort of schematic component to that. So, if he's going to go overlooked, if Philly is going to score any points, it's going to be because of Jalen Hurts, right? Like they're not going to be able to run the ball. So whether it's through the air or using his legs, don't be afraid to play Jalen Hurts. And I agree. I think naked's the way to play him. And these receivers just don't have the upside. And Jalen Hurts is going to get to his ceiling through rushing touchdowns if he gets there. So, Jalen Hurts naked for me on the Philly side. Tampa Bay side for me, we already talked about Fournette at the running back position. I think he's top play on the slate if he plays. And then I think, honestly, I'm not in love with a ton of the wide receivers on this slate. And this may be a double tight end slate for me, and I may just play Gronk with Darren Waller. Because Gronk is going to smash against Philly.
Yeah, I mean, and
they're
Gronk
31st against tight ends, and Gronk's 6,400 on the six gamer. I mean, Gronk is Brady's main target right now with Godwin out. 10, 10, 2, 11, and 9, 8, and 9, and 8, and 8, and 5, and 8 targets this year. It's like Gronk is the guy. And the crazy thing is Gronk is scoring 24, 22 DK points over the last 2 weeks with 0 touchdowns. You throw in 2 touchdowns in there, and you've got a 36-point game last week if Gronk catches 2 touchdowns, which is absolutely possible against anybody. So Gronk's got pretty much one of the highest ceilings on the slate too. And I really like Gronk and Waller, and I think I'm going to end up with a 2 tight end build.
Yeah, I don't mind Mike Evans at all. I mean, he 6 for 89, 2 scores last week against Carolina. I think the key here for Philly is going to be, can they get pressure on Tom Brady, right? Because that's kind of how you beat Tom Brady. You have to be able to get pressure on him and make him uncomfortable. And, I think if they could do that, this game could be close. I mean, these two teams have already played before. It was a 22-28 game the last time they played. And so, if Darius Slay can match up one-on-one and lock down Mike Evans, I think this game could get pretty interesting because now you're relying on guys like, Gronk, which can definitely get it done. But then, Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, those are the guys you're looking at, obviously with Leonard Fournette getting passes out of the backfield. But that's going to be the absolute key for Philly to even have any hope here, is they're going to have to get pressure on Tom Brady, because if they can't, it's going to be a really long day for this team.
And Slay did lock up Mike Evans last time they played. Mike Evans only had 4 DK points on 4 targets. So I just think the Philly scheme is just take away the big outside plays and let the guys work over the middle. That's why I just think this has Gronk written all over it. Gronk and Fournette for me.
Are you playing any Brady?
Probably not. You absolutely can, but I don't know that. I don't know that I'm going to get there.
You have any interest in Tyler Johnson? 7 targets last week, 6 targets the week before that. He's only 4K.
Yeah, you can play him.
Especially because of the snaps last week. 36 routes. And
what's his face? Grayson got hurt last week.
He's doubtful.
Yeah, he hurt his hamstring. So it's pretty much.
So Tyler Johnson likely plays mostly from the slot because Scotty Miller, we know, doesn't play from the slot, which is odd for a guy of his size. But regardless, I think Tyler Johnson could be a spot we could go with too, especially if Darius Slay is able to shut down Mike Evans. They're going to have to throw the ball to somebody. And Tyler Johnson kind of playing a little bit of a modified role of a Chris Godwin here, playing a lot in the slot. And at 4K, I think he is definitely, if I want to pay down at wide receiver, I do like that.
Yeah, he's in play. I agree.
All right, so let's jump over to the next game. Unless you have anything else you want to talk about here, I think we kind of hit on everybody.
No, I'm good.
All right, so the next game up is San Francisco against, how about them Cowboys? Right? So so this is a slate. The 49ers opened up at a 23.5 implied point total. It is up to a 24. You have the Cowboys, who have steadily maintained a 27. The highest total on the slate opened at a 50.5, up to 51. The only game on the slate that is above a 50 right now. And it comes in the form of the 49ers versus the Cowboys inside the dome. So obviously no weather concerns here. In terms of pricing for these players, I don't think, Dak is 6,400 on the 6-game slate. Jimmy Garoppolo is just basically free at 5,300. He is obviously, Garoppolo, very, very hard to trust. Doesn't have much of a great ceiling. He only has 2 games all year, or 3 games, excuse me. Week 8 against Chicago, he had 30 DK points, and then he had 23 week 9, and then you have to go back to the Cincinnati game where he had 20, week 14. Other than that, he's kind of a safe kind of option: 17, 18, 13, 20, 17, 12, 15. Right? They don't really want to have to, really open him up and have him throwing 40, 50 times a game. They want to rely on the run. I'm probably not going to have any Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think you necessarily need to go there against Dallas. Like you said, kind of how you're going to try to have to beat them is throwing the ball deep. Obviously they have the weapons with Debo, who's 8,100. Then you have Brandon Ayuk, who's at 5,400. And even George Kittle isn't really, for George Kittle standards, only $6K doesn't really cost you that much to get there. I just don't think I'm going to have any Jimmy Garoppolo stacks. I don't see that in my future.
No, me either. I think Ayuk is going to be the lone 49er I have interest in. Like I said, offenses have had success against Dallas this year are the ones that have been able to stretch the field, and I think if San Francisco is able to stretch the field, it's going to be because of Ayuk. And we've seen Ayuk's had big games over the last 5 weeks. So,
can I say this though? With Deebo Samuel, I feel like it's like basically fade him at your own peril, right? Because the man just continues to just smash on most weeks, right? Super kind of safe option. 28 points last week against the Rams, 17, 31, 18, 12, 20, 16, 30. Has a really high ceiling. He's actually priced down from what he has been. Week 17 against Houston, he was 8,700. He was 8,500 last week against the Rams. He is down to 8,100. Obviously he's getting carries out of the backfield as well, which kind of raises up him a little bit more because of the volume. Rushed 8 times last week for 45 yards. 77 receptions on the year, 1,400 yards, and 15 touchdowns for Deebo Samuel. Every week I bet against him, thinking that he's not going to have a great week, and he somehow just bites me in the ass every single time. But he is 8,100. He is the second highest player on the entire slate of games. The only player that costs more than him is I don't think it would take many people to guess. It's Cooper Kupp at 9K. But other than that, I mean, he is the second highest priced player on this slate. And I don't think it's that hard to fit him into a lineup because a lot of these players are priced down. It depends on where you go at quarterback. Since I'm not going to have a ton of interest in Josh Allen, I think you can kind of easily get to somebody like Deebo Samuel at 8,100.
Yeah, I agree. You can play him. I don't think you can play both Kupp and Samuel on a team. And I think I'm going to side with Kupp over Samuel. So I'll probably end up with Kupp myself. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm good with you playing Samuel. He's been a beast. He's really good. Like, imagine. I was just thinking the other day, what if Deebo was somehow on Kansas City? The way they would utilize him in that offense would be so sick.
Yeah, it's a lot of. I don't know why Kansas City ever stopped utilizing Tyreek Hill as a running back, which they used to do back in his early years. They
probably keep him healthy.
Stopped.
Debo's a tank. Debo runs linebackers over. It's crazy.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's been excellent.
He's a beast. And
the best news is he stayed healthy. That's kind of been his biggest problem, right? He just hasn't been able to stay healthy in his career.
Yeah. He's pretty much played through light injuries all year. He's been questionable the entire season, pretty much.
Well, yeah. Or, I mean, 3,800. Juwan Jennings, coming off that big 27.4 DK point. Did you have a lot of Juwan Jennings last week? Did you play him?
I had zero Juwan Jennings.
You didn't see the 6 for 94 and two tutties coming? You didn't?
No,
I didn't either.
I didn't. Yeah, so for me, it's Ayuk, and I'm out on everybody else on the San Francisco side. But I do like Dak a lot on the Dallas side. You look at San Francisco since week 10, they've only allowed one single game over 100 rush yards on defense. So if Dallas is going to score points this game, it's going to be because of Dak and not because of washed up Zeke Elliott. So the challenge with stacking Dak is he can spread the ball around so much that it's hard to pick one guy to go with him. And it's never multiple of these guys. So it's never Lamb and Cooper. It's usually one of the two. and then it's usually Schultz or Cedric Wilson, or the third wide receiver that goes with him. So you absolutely can play Cedric Wilson with him after the Gallup injury. I mean, he's got 12 targets the last 2 games, and we saw Cedric crush earlier this year when Gallup was out. I'm just afraid he's going to be extremely popular with the games that he's had recently and being only priced in the low 4K range. So I almost side with picking one of Lamb or Cooper if you're playing Dak and just hope you get the right one.
So you're telling me you have no interest in Elijah Mitchell at 5,500? Is that what you're telling me?
You can play him.
That man gets an absurd amount of touches or of carries, I should say. Carries.
He does.
He was starting to look like maybe they were going to utilize him in the passing game, and then that kind of trend back down. But they're only 5,500. I don't mind him as an
he's
option.
Fine.
Dallas.
He's not somebody I'm excited about, but he's not somebody I'm crossing off the list either.
Because, I mean, they're going to have to get there somehow, right, to beat Dallas. And Dallas has been obviously much better against the pass. They're 16th in rush DVOA on the year, more middle of the road against the run. Obviously, that's what San Francisco wants to do is run the football. So at the price tag, I don't really mind them at 5,500. Then on the other side, I guess let's go ahead and actually, let me ask you this before we jump over to the Dallas side. As far as George Kittle is concerned, where would you put him among the kind of the top? The top 5 guys here with Kelsey, Gronk, Kittle, Waller, Schultz.
4th. I rank them. Waller, Gronk, Kelsey, Kittle, Schultz. You probably could honestly even flip Gronk and Waller.
Yeah, I guess that's fair as I'm looking at this. Yeah, I think I probably would agree that I probably would have. Yeah, I'd probably have him 4th. I think he's just a tier below the Waller, Gronk, and Kelsey for me. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's jump over to the Cowboys side. Keep this thing moving. So we can get to these last 2 games. So on the Dallas side, you have Dak at 6,400. And then the wide receivers, we already, Zeke, $6,100. No thanks. Even at $6,100, I just can't play Zeke.
No, either.
Then the wide receivers, you have CeeDee Lamb at 6,200, which feels really cheap for him, and then Amari Cooper at 5,900. Thing with CeeDee Lamb, he hasn't shown much of a ceiling, and I mean, at least lately, right? You have to go back to week 10 where he had 28.6 to find a game where he scored over 20 DK points.
Yep. The
He's
thing
been
is
very boom or bust.
Yeah. The thing is, though, is everybody's going to say the same thing, and I think he's going to go lower owned than he should be because of it. But you have to remember at the same time, I mean, he's one of the more talented wide receivers in the whole league. And he is going to get a high volume here. And if San Francisco jumps out to a lead early, which absolutely is possible on Dallas should want to throw the ball a lot here in this matchup because they need to against San Francisco because of what San Francisco allows on defense. So I think Dak is going to be throwing the ball a ton here either way. It's just a matter of Lamb and Cooper seem to alternate. They're really big games, and we know Lamb can have big games. I mean, he scored 29 against Atlanta, 20 against Minnesota, 39 against New England, 26 in Week 1 against Tampa Bay. He's got 19 against the Giants. So he does have big games in him, and a handful of them this year. He just hasn't had them in a while. And throwing recency bias out, so like you could just say that he's due for a big game. Because the matchup doesn't warrant you to not play these wide receivers from Dallas. Like these San Francisco corners aren't great.
Right. I mean, you have San Francisco, who they're 16th in pass DVOA, but they're 2nd in rush DVOA on the year.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, it's going to come down to really because they're so close in price. So I don't think pricing really has that big of a deal. 6,200, 5,900. So that kind of gets thrown out the window to me in terms of the price. It's going to really come down to ownership. If CeeDee Lamb is going to be lower owned than Amari Cooper, then I'm going to go to CeeDee Lamb all day.
And he probably will be, just because when you look at those two guys and you see Amari Cooper has a 5 starting salary, like 5,900. And you see Lamb is 6,200, like he's got a 6. It's just something in your brain is like, wow, why is Amari Cooper below 6K, right? And then you go look at the game logs recently and you see, Amari Cooper, Amari Cooper's been, a little bit better than Lamb recently. But I side with Lamb, man. He's the better receiver right now. And he just hasn't had a big game. And I just think he's due for one. You're muted.
Oh, no, I was just looking at the matchups here. Yeah. That's where I'm going to go. Like I said, I'm going to follow the matchups. And then from there you have, you brought up Cedric Wilson. I don't mind him as as sort of the cheaper tier of option. What is he, 4,400?
Yeah. I think he's going to get a little bit too popular for me, though.
Yeah, seen a target each of his last 2 games, but he's only seen 6 targets in each of those games. Well, now, don't get me wrong, one of those, the Philly game was kind of a blowout, but even in the Arizona game where they trailed, I mean, he still only saw 6 targets in that game, 6 for 35 and a tutty. So
that's the game Gallup got hurt.
Yeah, pour one out for the homie. Hate to see that.
Yep.
But for me, the most I'm definitely gonna have some Dak stacks. I will probably prioritize CeeDee Lamb if he's gonna become like I said, if he's gonna have lower ownership. That's where I'm gonna go with. And then as far as the tight end position, obviously Dalton Schultz, that dude has been really good this year.
Yeah, he's been a beast.
Yeah. Only saw 3 targets last week, but still scored 2 touchdowns, 17.1 DK points in that one. But prior to that, 10, 9, 8, sees a pretty heavy amount of targets. And you could see, that kind of target share with him. And if, depending on if this game gets to be a little bit more of a shootout, highest total game, no Michael Gallup, we could see, more targets for Dalton Schultz this week as well. So he is only 5K. Much cheaper than these other other higher priced tier of tight end. So Dalton Schultz, I think, is always in play. So if you want to stack him with obviously one of the other pass catchers, I am 100% on board with that. Are you playing Zeke?
Nope.
Even at $6,100?
Nope. I'm out on that.
He's just not. I mean, it makes it even worse that he's not seeing any pass catching volume at all. 3 targets, 2 targets, 1 target, 4 targets. 6 targets. Back in week 14, 3 targets. I know some of this is game script, but again, the Arizona game, they trailed in that game. And he still only saw 2 targets there. They have been managing his workload a little bit, but week 18 against Philly, he still saw 18 carries in that game. To me, he's very touchdown or bust, in my opinion, and a very low ceiling.
I agree. Yeah, he's got to score 2 touchdowns to even get remotely close to having a had to have it score.
Yeah, if he was involved in the passing game, I might be a little bit more intrigued because I know he's going to get all the carries on the goal line. But no thanks, not against this defense, not against the number 2 rush DVOA. Defense in San Francisco.
I'm good.
And he has just been terrible this year. Dallas doing Dallas things, given a running back ridiculous money. Jesus. They have Tony Pollard on the roster, right? And the clear better running back. Zeke is washed. Zeke is done. Dallas is going to get knocked out in the first round. Let's just be honest here.
Wouldn't shock me. Unfortunately, it wouldn't shock me.
trying to get a reaction. I didn't get the reaction I wanted.
No, that's all right. We could talk about the biggest upset of the weekend, though. The next game when
here we go. All right, we'll see on this one. All right, so the most lopsided game of the weekend, we have the Sunday night game, Pittsburgh Steelers, Mr. Big fucking Ben coming out here trying to give the old, we don't got a shot. Everybody's got counting us out. This is the best team in the league. We're just going to go there, have a little bit of fun, but we don't have, shut the fuck up, Ben. Like, we know what you're doing, okay? We're not stupid. Yeah. We get it. You're trying to play the old game here of, our backs are against the wall. We're the underdog, I'm sure they have some bulletin board material up there. Though I did find it funny that as Deontay Johnson said the opposite, said that, no one jump on the bandwagon after we win. I'm like, okay, Deontay. Love you, but no. Anyways, so Pittsburgh is opened at a 17.25 implied point total. It is now down to 16.75, the lowest on the slate, and it's really not even close. I am blocking Derek Brown with his, when Pitt wins by 18, it will be lopsided comment. D-Bro.
Blocked. Blocked and reported.
Blocked. Placed in timeout. Anyways, the Chiefs open at a 30.75. It has dropped down to a measly 29.25. Open at a 48-point total is down to a 46. So let's talk about this game. Let's start with the Pittsburgh side. You have Big Ben at 5,200.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that's a no for me, dog. Now you have Najee Harris at 6,600.
No, thank you.
Okay. And you have the wide receivers at Deontay at 6,700.
No, thank you.
What about your boy Chase Claypool at $4,800?
No, thank you.
Just straight fading.
I'm out on Pittsburgh.
Not even Patty Fry at 4,200.
What week did KC bench Sorensen? Do you remember?
They haven't really benched him. They just stopped playing him as much. They essentially moved him up. Don't get me wrong. His snaps dropped significantly. Yep. They went down to like a 15%, and then he basically kind of played a type of linebacker hybrid role instead of playing safety. Which, of course, against the Bengals, I don't know. We decided to just go ahead and, hey, let's throw old Dirty Dan back there. He'll do a good job against Jamar fucking Chase and be able to stop him. Yeah, this is a great idea. Way to go, Spags. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, so let's jump to the Chiefs side.
Well, no, I was going to say, what do you remember what week it was that they made that switch? Wasn't it like week 5 or 6?
No, it was later than that. It was, let me look. I can tell you.
Well, because the home games since week 8, the Chiefs allowed 17 points to the Giants, 7 to Green Bay, 9 to Dallas, 9 to Denver, 9 to the Raiders, and 10 to Pittsburgh. They've given up one double-digit point game at home since week 8. And that was to Pittsburgh, but they only scored 10 points. Well, in the Giants game, but
Daniel Sorensen is terrible.
Yeah, he's awful. Ever since they made that switch, that defense, and we know how much better that defense plays at home.
Well, of course, yeah, and I mean you have Big Ben, who is an absolute statue standing back there, which is bad news because Spags is just going to dial up the rush, and blitz the shit out of him.
Pittsburgh might not score.
Real technical term, blitz the shit out of him there with that, but
BTSO.
Yeah. So, like, I guess, like, I don't, like, hate Najee as he's only 6,600. Like, that's cheap for him. But I guess he did get hurt, last week, with that elbow injury.
Yeah, he barely played in the must-win game.
Yeah, well, I mean, with that injury. And then he hasn't practiced yet this week?
No. He'll probably go, but I don't think he's going to play every snap like he normally does.
Yeah. I don't mind Deontay at 6,700. I don't know. Let's jump over to the Chiefs side. fuck it.
Would you play Snell if Najee was out? Or are you just saying, nah, you're good?
No, because I just don't see a way that Pittsburgh's defense is going to be able to slow down Kansas City's offense. And you have to remember, when the Chiefs whooped their ass 2 weeks ago, in Arrowhead, they didn't even have Travis Kelce for that game, right?
Yeah, and Tyreek played, 6 snaps?
Right. Yeah, that was whenever everybody tilted their faces.
That was the Pringle game, when we were all over Pringle.
Yes. If you listen to this show, and you don't listen to the other 3-letter network that does DFS content, that has somebody here that does position-by-position breakdowns, or game versus game, you would have got
Foxtrot Tango Niner.
Yeah. Anyways,
love you, Derek.
yeah, I think so for this game. I don't think Tyreek is going to have the ownership that he should, and he's only 7,100, right? Which is something that you have to go back to. Not 2021, because he's not been under the lowest he's been all year was 7,700 week 10, right? And that was on a showdown slate. So incredibly cheap, 7,100. I think he's burned some people. He's limited practice. I don't think he's going to have the ownership that he should.
Yeah, I mean, he practiced in full yesterday, and if Tyreek's going to practice in full, yeah, we saw, dude, how many times do we get players at injury discounts? I mean, Dalvin Cook 2-3 weeks ago when he came back against Pittsburgh off his injury, ran for 200 yards. Remember that? And we were sitting in our chat before the game started, and we were like, why are we not just going to captain Dalvin Cook because nobody's playing Dalvin Cook? And he ended up running for 200 yards and, 2 or 3 touchdowns. You just play these guys at low ownership that can break the slate. You just do it. And I agree. I think there's so many question marks around Tyreek right now. And with his volatility as it is, I think nobody's going to play him, and he's $7,100. That's ridiculous. That's too cheap.
I mean, he legit has 50-point upside, which is
absolutely
not. I mean, it's not insane for him to get there.
He did in week 2.
Yeah, he has a 40-point upside. So I mean, $7,100 Tyreek Hill. I'm all about that life. And so love him at that price. Now, in terms of the other wide receivers here on this offense, if you're wanting to do a little bit of a game stack, get a little bit different, you have McCole Hardman, who's 4,100. Where is Byron Pringle?
39.
Shut the front door. Yes, he's $3,900. What is going on, DK? I mean, he's clearly the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. 8 targets last week against Denver in that game. Obviously, the Pittsburgh game where he went 6 for 75 and 2 scores in that game. $3,900 Byron Pringle. I'm gonna be about that, but I also think everybody else is also going to be about that too. At $3,900, if you're wanting to pay down and get a little bit different. So I don't mind getting to a little bit of McCole Hardman at 4,100. Saw 11 targets last week, but that was also, I think, game plan related because we saw Tyreek Hill coming in and out of that lineup and not really getting much of volume in that game. But he did see 11 targets last week in that game, 4,100. I think that McCole Hardman likely is going to be very low owned. And so in a Chiefs offense, I just don't mind taking stabs at some of these guys because, as we know, Pat tends to really spread the ball around quite a bit. And so we have these games where it's really weird, where Michael Burton scores touchdowns and we tilt our faces off in our little chat that we have because Michael Burton is getting goal line carries and passes and stuff like that, because that's just kind of what they do. But for the most part, I don't have any interest in DeMarcus Robinson whatsoever. As much as I love Josh Gordon, and every time he's on the field, I pay mostly attention to exactly what he's doing and if they're going to throw him the ball. But from this standpoint, no, you're not playing Josh Gordon whatsoever. So I think for me on the Kansas City side, obviously we could play Travis Kelce, especially at a reduced price tag. But I also think that means it's going to come for more ownership for him. And I don't think that you're going to see as much for Tyreek Hill as you will see for Travis Kelce.
Yeah,
especially with the volatility in him. So I love Tyreek. I'm going to prioritize him against Pittsburgh, and then from there, I will have some Byron Pringle. I'm not going to fade him unless he's like really high on, but I don't think that's going to happen because I think there's a lot of other wide receivers here in the range that I think people can play. That I just don't think his ownership is going to be crazy either.
Yeah. And the other thing too, also to note with Tyreek is in the weeks that he, absolutely smashes. So like week 15, he scored 36. Week 10, he scored 28. Week 8, he scored 28. Week 4, he scored 50. And week 1, he scored 40. If you look at Mahomes those same weeks, Mahomes tends to go with him. So in those weeks, Mahomes scored 35. In week 10, Mahomes scored 39. Week 8, 15. That one's an outlier. Then week 4, Mahomes 32, and week 1, Mahomes 36. So I think if you're going to play Tyreek, play Mahomes with him. A lot of people will play Tyreek by himself, but the correlation tends to be Mahomes and Tyreek go together.
No, I agree. Let me ask you this. So as far as the running backs are concerned on the Kansas City side, do you have any interest in Derek Gore? Especially if you think that the Chiefs really kind of blow him out. Doesn't sound like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to play. He hasn't practiced yet, so he hasn't been cleared yet. He has not practiced this week. I don't think they rush him back for this game. And then you have Daryl Williams, who actually left last week's game with an injury, with a toe injury. He has been limited in practice this week, so he is back. But, I mean, with somebody that's dealing with an injury like Daryl Williams is, like Derek Gore he's been somebody that they've really kind of been showing some trust in. I know Andy Reid loves Derek Gore. He has talked about him, especially in the preseason, how much he loved him. He doesn't see a lot of volume. I mean, you have to go back to actually this same game against Pittsburgh where he actually had 12 carries for 43 yards and then 3 receptions for 61 yards in that game. One of those was a deep pass, or it was a pass on the sideline. He continued to run. The linebacker stopped covering him, and Pat Mahomes hit him for a deep pass for 50 yards in that game. He did not score. But if this is kind of similarly to this game of, if you project that you think the Chiefs are going to roll, I think Derek Gore could end up seeing another type of role like you saw in that game and not to mention the fact that the Chiefs just generally don't give guys, you're probably not going to see Daryl Williams go out there and get 80% of the opportunities or 80% of the snaps, right? Derek Gore is going to be involved.
Yeah. I probably won't get there, but I mean,
it's thin. It's thin for sure, and I think
he absolutely could score 15 points. I don't think he gets in the 20s, but I mean, he could get you 15.
But I guess I should also mention though that one thing that wasn't there against Pittsburgh was Jerick McKinnon.
True.
Jerick McKinnon last week against Denver played 30% of the snaps.
Yeah.
3 targets, 11 routes, 50 yards, touchdown against Denver. So I don't know. So that's probably that play is probably not as good with Jerick McKinnon back because they still have the 3 running backs and they're probably going to be a full on committee. So I would probably avoid the Kansas City running backs, to be honest with you, in this game.
I think I'm in the same boat.
All right. So let's jump over. Do you have anything else to talk about?
No, I'm good from that game.
Okay. So like I said, for me, at least on the Pittsburgh side, I know we didn't really touch on him. I do like Deontay Johnson. The target share is hard to really deny the amount of targets he sees. I mean, he's almost 10 plus targets every single week. Don't think he has a crazy ceiling, but I think he's somebody that can get you 15 to 20 and be a part of the winning optimal lineup. And he's only 6,700. So I don't mind that. I know he's a little bit more expensive. He's the seventh highest priced wide receiver on the slate on the 6-game slate on DraftKings. But I just don't think he's going to really carry any ownership because of nobody's going to want to play Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And so I just think he's a little bit of a safer play. I would love to say Chase Claypool, but my goodness, it's really hard to trust him with Big Ben. So anyways, I think that's kind of where I come in. If you want, because Chase Claypool is only 4,800, if you want to play him, I don't hate it. But we just haven't really seen much of a ceiling for him. He did score 18 last week. They utilized him a little bit more on the ground, 3 carries in that game. But for the most part, he's been very volatile this year. So, anyways, let's jump over to the last game of the slate, and that is Arizona against the Rams. So on this one, we have the last game of the slate. This is a 50.5, open at a 50.5 point total, down to a 49.5 point total. From here, you have the Cardinals, who opened at a 23 applied point total. It is now a 22.25. And then you have the Rams, who opened up at 27.5. It has down to 26.75, 26.75 implied point total here. What are your thoughts on this game?
I actually
the
think
late night hammer.
I actually think this is the most straightforward game of all of them. I think I'm going to fade the Arizona side minus maybe one of the running backs. And then on the Rams side, it's Kupp or OBJ or Kupp or OBJ for me. Kupp's got 28 targets against Arizona in 2 games this year. He's got a 13 and a 15 target game. And we've seen him, one of his 40-point games, I think, came against Arizona earlier this year. So, and we saw OBJ, he scored 20 points against them in the one game that he's played against Arizona after he came over from the trade. So I think it's one of those two and not both. Because if you're playing Kupp, you want him to score 30 for you at 9K. And if he's doing that, it's likely that, OBJ is not necessarily getting there as well. Because Stafford's thrown for pretty much 280 yards in both games. So it's not likely he can support both of them on the same team. So yeah, I think it's a pretty straightforward game for me from a DFS standpoint.
In terms of the running backs, I just don't I don't love with Connor and Edmonds both back. It's going to be a little bit harder, I think, for me to get to them because Chase Edmonds said he's planning on being back.
Yeah,
I mean Chase Edmonds is 5K, and I don't know. These two kind of tend to eat into each other a little bit. So
sure.
I think it kind of lowers Chase Edmonds' ceiling a little bit, but I do think he's probably going to be the more involved pass catcher here, where you have James Conner, on the ground. We have seen James Conner in this matchup. I mean, so the last time they played in Week 14, he went 13 carries for 31 yards, and then he had 9 targets for 94 yards there. That's where all of his production came from.
But that would go to Chase Edmonds in this game.
More than likely. I mean, he'll get
still going to be involved,
but it's not going to be nearly. You're not going to be able to project that for James Conner, and he's the 5th highest priced running back at 6,300.
Yeah,
where
I just think Arizona's pretty much a fade for me. I honestly might just play the Rams defense.
You hate the Cardinals that much, huh?
Ever since DeAndre Hopkins got hurt, they just don't look as good. I mean, their metrics have fallen off the table completely. They're like bottom second half of the league in offensive production. And the Rams are going to be able to get pressure on Kyler Murray, and Kyler's not really running that much this year either. So he's just trying to, stretch the ball down the field to Antoine Wesley, which they've been able to have success against some success. They did it against Dallas, but that's kind of Dallas's weak point as well. I just don't think they're going to have as much success doing that, against the Rams. I mean, the last game, it was a 23-30 game the last time out. Murray threw 49 times. He did throw for, almost 400 yards, but he didn't throw any touchdowns, threw 2 interceptions. I don't know. Kyler just spreads the ball around a ton. Even when Hopkins was out there, I mean, all these pass catchers I feel like they just get you 10 to 15 points, and that's it. Like, nobody ever crushes from Arizona.
I mean, Zach Ertz has the potential, at least with the amount of targets that he's seeing, especially since DeAndre Hopkins has been out 11.
Yeah, but are you going to play Ertz over Gronk, Kittle, Waller, and Kelsey, and even Knox and Schultz? Because I mean, Schultz is only 300 more than Ertz.
Probably not. I think probably not. I mean, if I'm going to play a wide receiver here for them, it's probably Christian Kirk. He's only 5,300.
Yeah, it's probably that would be my pick too, I think.
But I mean, even him, I mean, he's been a little bit more volatile. The last time these two teams played, he had 3 receptions for 86 yards, no score. in that game. Detroit was the last really good game he had, which was week 15, 9 catches, 94 yards, and a score for 24.4. He does see a lot of targets, 9, 9, 12, 6, 3, 5, 8. I mean, he's kind of the guy that sees most of the targets, especially with DeAndre Hopkins out. I'm not worried about Jalen Ramsey because Jalen Ramsey doesn't really shadow, and I don't think he's going to shadow Christian Kirk. So that's not really a concern there. Like you mentioned, he did throw for 383 yards. Kyler Murray did the last time they played. Kyler Murray has been running the ball more the last 4 or 5 weeks than what he was earlier in the year by a little bit. But the last time, like you mentioned, they played, he rushed 7 times for 61 yards. He has scored 20 plus DK points in both games that they played this year. I am definitely going to be creating a Kyler Murray stack because Kyler Murray does have a really high ceiling. I mean, he's somebody that could go out and score 35. But it's not going to be a lot. It's not going to be my favorite stack, but not having any Kyler Murray feels a little bit like a mistake. I think it comes down to how many lineups you're planning on playing, how many entries you're looking to have. Obviously, with this being the last game, unless you're playing, it's either really going to come down to the 6-game slate. If you're not playing the 6-game slate, this game is not obviously doesn't matter because this game is not going to be on any of the other slates.
Right.
So, and Showdown is completely different, which I'll definitely be playing Showdown for sure. And I have a pretty good idea how I'm going to play this in a Showdown slate. This will be one where because I think everybody will be on the Rams in a Showdown. This will be play heavy Cardinal onslaught with a couple of Rams. As far as the running backs, at least on the other side of I guess we didn't really talk about them. Let's hit on that really quickly. You talked about Sonny Michel. He's only 5,400, and then Cam Akers. I know we kind of mentioned it, but are you going to roll the dice on Cam Akers at 4,200?
I'm not. I'm good if you want to, but I'm not. And that's just because I'm going to play one team on the slate. But for somebody playing multiple teams, he's absolutely in play. I mean, you could see. I think you could project. You could fairly project 6 to 8 carries and 3 to 5 targets for Akers here, which should get you to the 9 to 12 opportunity range, 9 to 13. He had 8 last week. I mean, if he scores a touchdown or rips off a long one, he's 4,200 or whatever it is. I mean,
and he played 20% of the snaps last week.
Yeah.
If they're planning on significantly upping I think you have to see him probably get up to 40-45% of the snaps, right?
Probably.
If your goal is to really ramp him up and to get him thinking that you have a long play and they get past the Cardinals here, and then they're going to be heading into a matchup against the same team that knocked them out last year and the Green Bay Packers. I think you have to you really see what you got here and really ramp him up. You can't just let him play another 20% of the snaps.
If you're going to bring him back 5.5 months after an Achilles injury, you're going to play him, right? Like, why even risk it to come back?
Would it be fantastic if all of a sudden, he's just fantastic and then he just plays 70% of the snaps and or plays like 60% of the snaps, gets like 70% of the opportunities, and nobody plays him? It
wouldn't shock me.
Because especially on a 6-game slate, I don't think people are going to be saving room for Cam Akers at $4,200, right? So he's going to be zero ownership. I'm talking myself in. I'm talking myself in the.
Don't go crazy with it, but you absolutely
not. Like this isn't a guy you should play 50% of your lineups, but no. I think if you're playing, if you're playing, 10 plus lineups, I think having a lineup or two with
1
them
or
in
2,
there, yeah, I don't mind that. Because even if he doesn't, I still think it's possible he could still get you 10, 12.
At 4,200, he's not going to sink you if he gets 8 points or whatever on a 6-game slate. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
and the possibility's there.
Yeah, you could legit see. I mean, and it's a great rushing matchup against Arizona too. So, like, if he gets 8 carries for 50 yards and scores a touchdown, there's 11 points there, and he catches, let's say, 3 passes for 15 yards. There's another 4 points there. So you're looking at 15 points, 16 points right there. If he gets in the end zone.
I have to lie. I don't get it. You know?
I'd probably rather play Akers than Gore if you're going to go down, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially with Jerick McKinnon back. Yeah. 100%. And then I guess, Tyler Higby has been getting more involved. If you look over especially the last 2 weeks, 8 targets, 9 targets the week before that. He had scored the 2 touchdowns last week. The yardage isn't necessarily there, 55 yards, 69 yards, but he has scored double-digit DK points each of his last 2 games. Runs a ton of routes. I think he's a little bit thin of an option, or at least comparatively to the other tight ends that are on the slate. But I think if you want to get a little bit different, I don't hate Tyler Higby either.
Yeah, he's fine.
All right.
I'm not going to end up there, but he's fine.
Yeah, right. Of course. But I think for the people that are playing a lot more entries that aren't just playing one lineup, I think getting some exposure to some of these guys that aren't the high-priced tight ends, where I think most people are going to pay up to on a 6-game slate, you can get really different. And, it's not out of the range of possibility that Tyler Higby at his price can score, 20 DK points. I think it's there. He scores a couple tutties, at his price, I don't mind him either. And I'm not opposed at all of doing running double tight end either. Here this week, there's enough really to pay up for tight ends that I think are in a good spot. And if you're looking to pay down, and if you don't love any of the pay down like wide receivers, I think paying down to even a Patty Fry at 4,200 or Higby at 4,100. Hunter Henry's only 3,700. I think some of these pay down tight ends, I think, is a way you could go, and that would definitely get you different because I don't think there's going to be many people playing double tight end.
I agree.
So, all right. Well, that's the 6 games. We are definitely still have to do our traditional lineup build. We are going to do this once again through the 6-game slate. On this one. So, Matty, start it off.
Darren Waller.
Things you love to see. I'm going to play Tyreek Hill at 7,100.
All right, and to correlate that, like I said, if Tyreek goes nuclear, he takes Mahomes with him. So let's play Mahomes.
Okay. Well, said we loved him. We're still going to love him. I'm going to go Devin Singletary.
All right. I'm going to give us some salary, and we're going to play Rams D.
Rams D at 2,700.
They're cheap. It is. 4th cheapest.
Love the 49ers too at 2,800. Okay. So right now we're at 5,300 remaining average salary. We need a running back, 2 wide receivers, and a flex. I'm going to go let's go with CeeDee Lamb.
All right. Fournette.
All right. We'll lock in Fournette. He's 5,900. That leaves 4,600 left remaining with a wide receiver and a flex. I don't know how ugly this is going to get, but let's try it. I'm going to lock in Brandon Ayuk. 3,900. Oh, I know what we could do.
Pringle.
Yep. To go along with our stack.
I'm good with it.
Yep.
I like the Lamb Ayuk mini stack. That's sexy. And we'll just need to keep an eye on Fournette. because they do have. I don't know if Gio Bernard's playing, but they designated him to return. And then they also obviously have Vaughn and Bell, and Fournette himself is questionable. So we just need to keep an eye on that. But if Fournette were to be out, there's some cheaper running backs that we could play. Like we could just pivot to Williams or Mitchell, probably Mitchell, since we have Pringle and Tyreek already for Kansas City and Mahomes.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay.
Sweet.
So we're going to lock this one in. We got Pat Mahomes, Devin Singletary, Leonard Fournette. Again, we'll have to keep an eye on that if he doesn't come back for this week, which sounds like he's going to, but if he does not, we'll definitely have to make a decision there and move off him. And then Tyreek, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, Darren Waller, Byron Pringle, and Rams D with $0 remaining. We're going to lock this one in. I like this lineup quite a bit. So
I do too.
That one has been locked in. All right. Well, this one, a little bit different than our typical, position by positional breakdown that we typically do. But with so many different slates, we wanted to do something a little bit different. Next week, I fully expect DK should get back to their typical, main slate should be the Saturday and Sunday slate like we've seen. We have a real shot. Hopefully, if everything works out, the next weekend slate could be absolutely amazing. We could be seeing Chiefs, Bills, Titans, and the Bengals, right? That would it be? Yeah. Titans and Bengals. And then we could see the Packers, Rams, and the Cowboys against the Bucks. That would be the dream matchup, the dream slate for the divisional round. All those games would be excellent. So hopefully that's the way that this turns out. We'll see. Anyways, I appreciate everybody rocking with us all year. We are not going anywhere, though. Like I said, we'll be back next week for the divisional round. We'll be back for the championship round, and I think we'll probably be back as well for the Super Bowl for the showdown slate there. Again, you can go ahead and jump into our Discord that we have for DFS, redraft, dynasty, player props. I think the boys are might be going live this Friday. Tom and Cody doing the player props. I'm not 100% sure on that. Last I had heard, they're looking to do that on Friday night. So if you're into that kind of thing, player props, they should be back this week. The prop show should be back hopefully this week. So that being said, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Go Chiefs, go 49ers,
go Cowboys.
Anyways, I hope everybody has a good weekend. Let's win some money this weekend on the 6-game slate. Definitely going to be playing a bunch of different slates here. Showdown, 2-game, 3-game, 6-game. I'm going to be doing it all. Anyways, I hope everybody has a good weekend and stay safe out there. And we'll see you guys again next Thursday right here. Lock it in. We out.
We out.